Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Simon Chartier's New York Stories. So, I should be practicing, but I'm going to take a little break from practicing. It's cold out. I was outside before for spring. The weather could change. The sun, a couple of clouds come over. I live right on the ocean, so if the wind goes south or southwest, it gets cold because the water's still cold. But, went surfing today. Been doing a lot of cycling, a lot of bicycle riding. That just to get around and go do things, and did a bunch of long rides at 20 miles plus. So that's what I've been up to lately. Practicing a lot. I have a jazz gig, not punk rock, not rock and roll, but I have a jazz gig Saturday at Wits End in Rockaway. It's like, I don't really think that I'm a great jazz musician, but people keep offering me money to play it, so hey, for that kind of money, I'll go underwater and fuck fish. You like my jazz playing? You want to pay me? I'm there, daddy-o. You probably like my playing better than I do. But anyway, so here we are. Okay, we're still in that year 1980. So 80 will always be a lucky number for me because my last name is Chartier, and that's 8 letters. And 1980 is kind of the year that, everything really started to gel. So I'm playing with Ivan in the outsets, and I'm going around all the clubs, and I'm living in Avenue B Death House. Like I said, this guy got stabbed to death right outside the piece of wood tacked over what used to be a window in my room. And then I didn't get messed with that much, except for one time the cops grabbed me and beat me up and took my $10 that I was going over to black tape. But I went into the building and the cops jumped me and they kicked the crap out of me and robbed me. But then again, some of the cops I used to get high with them or whatever, so it was a crapshoot how he was going to get treated. So I'm walking by this, and I see this poster, and it says, at A7, LESRMAS. LESRMAS. Leisure Mass. Or something. It says Lower East Side Rock Music Appreciation Society. I said, wow. And it was A7. So I went by there. I went to see what happened, and they were having some punk bands, some hardcore bands. I went, oh yeah, this is great. It's right around the corner from my house. And I would stop in once in a while. I've seen some pretty good bands over there over the years, I wasn't, I guess, a mainstay in the scene because I was too much going all over the place. But, I would go. There's still some people I know from those days that I run into once in a while. So there was the A7, and right across the street was University of the Streets. And I would hear all kinds of free jazz and bebop and like John Coltrane style jazz and all this great jazz coming out of there. So I would stop and listen, and they would have these jazz jam sessions and everything. And I didn't go. I wasn't good enough at jazz yet. I was kind of into my punk rock phase, but I would listen to it. I've always loved jazz, so I listened to that. And then I also want to say I'm playing with Ivan Julian. I met a lot of great people. I met Lynn Irvin and John Velarde. And John Velarde, I met him, I think, hanging outside of Max's, waiting for Thunders to go on or something. So I met him, and then I remember he was living in this apartment that was all like bare wood on the floors and bare wood on the walls. It was completely kind of stripped and gutted, but he told me he was paying $63 a month. And I forget what block he lived on, but it may have been 10th Street between 2nd Avenue and 1st Avenue. I mean, can you imagine $63 a month? That's like nowadays, you can't get. There's probably some yuppie cafe that a cup of coffee is $63. So and then Lynn Irvin. Lynn Irvin was a good friend of mine. Is a good friend of mine. Great drummer, great person, and a family friend. Her father's the great 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 jazz artist Booker Irvin, and Mrs. Irvin, Lynn's mom. She was so nice to me. Uh, me and Johnny and Lynn, we'd go over to Lynn's mom's house and uh, Mrs. Irvin would feed me. I remember one time she gave me collard greens, red cabbage, black eyed peas, and cornbread. And man, I ate that stuff up, let me tell you. Another time she said, "Boy, you are nasty. You're going to take a bath." And she made me take a bath and change my clothes. And she says, "Boy, you nasty. And you're going to change your clothes. You're going to take a bath right now." And when Mrs. Irvin spoke, we listened. Well, she was so nice. It was probably the first bath that I'd had in like 6 months or something. I'm not kidding you, man. There wasn't, it really wasn't. So there was really a lot of, what do these yuppies say now? Options. There wasn't really a lot of bathing options in the Lower East Side back then. So that was just some great friends. Also, Bobby Battery, who was the roadie for Ivan, and for outsets. He would just help us. The basic thing of a roadie with our deal was that he would get us the van ride to the gig and back, but he'd also help us get on stage quick and get off stage quick, because we were playing shows where there was other bands and we had to get out of there, or get in quick, and he would help us with that. And he was great. I reconnected with him recently. I was playing a rockabilly gig out here in Rockaway, and it was so nice to talk to him. He's got a lot of stories. He worked with all the greats. He was a roadie for anybody that was anybody in New York back then. Not just the Heartbreakers and us, but I bet you anybody. I'm not going to conjecture or guess. I'm trying to keep these stories accurate, not trying to make myself look good. Like I always said, I'm not a tough guy. I wasn't the toughest guy in the Lower East Side. I got friends in the hardcore scene or in the street that were real tough guys that could fight anybody. And I knew guys like the Eye Doctor, who was one of the toughest guys you ever met in your life, just like a lion. That's. I knew people like that, but I'm not going to try to say I was the toughest guy. I'm not going to try to say I was in the scene, the centerpiece of the scene or anything, because, I was in this scene, that scene, all over. I was in Bay Ridge, Bath Beach, then I was playing the punk rock on the East Side, then I was trying to learn jazz, going to see Chuck Wayne. So, I was, just following music in general. I was like a musical gourmand, So then it starts getting really cold. Okay, there was a cold winter. I'm getting really cold. I'm freezing my ass off. After my debacle with Ivan and with, kind of lost 2 really good friends over that double booking thing, and I cut myself, and I get this big scar on my face, which kind of helped keep people away, because they see the scar on my face and they figure this guy was in a knife fight or something. I better stay away from him. They don't know I did it to myself. But it kind of actually was kind of protective camouflage for me on the street, And it started getting really, really cold, and I was the drummer in the Shane Hughes band was Alan Thompson, among other drummers, and then the bass player was Mark Ettinger. So Alan Thompson, he lived in the Yippie house. He was super involved with the Yippies, and he was super involved with this thing, Rock Against Racism, RAR. Now, RAR, like a lot of other cool things, started in England, and it started about this maybe a few months before. It started in '79, so we was doing RAR over here in the States in like, you know, '80. It spread pretty quick, and it was a response to Eric Clapton. He got drunk and he said all this bad shit about people, about Pakistanis, Indians, Jamaicans, black people, all this bad shit. And he made a total ass out of himself. And, you know, Rock Against Racism came out as a reaction to that in England. It spread over here. So Alan Thompson was in charge of RAR. So Alan and the other people in the hippies said, you can live in the sound booth in Studio 10. You can live there if you run the sound and help manage the shows and help book the bands. So I took the deal because Studio 10 had a lot of advantages. I could have my guitars with me. At that point, I had a Yamaha bass, Japanese-made bass, and a Japanese classical guitar that I still have. And I have my Les Paul TV model guitar, and I had my Music Man amp, and that's what I had back then. So I could live with my instrument. So instead of like walking over there from Avenue B in the freezing cold to go practice, and you know, trying to get somebody to let me into Studio 10, I could live there, and it had like a little carpet on the floor, and it had electricity and a heater and shit. So I was like, I'm all for it, man. And so I started running the sound, and then Alan Thompson said, check this cassette out. Check this cassette out. This band from D.C., they want to play here. They're called the Bad Brains. And he goes, they're an African-American punk rock band. And I was like, I want to check these guys out, you know. I was like, wow, African-American punk rock band. Well, I think I'm already in one playing with Ivan. So this, I was like, it's something I can, you know, identify with. Let me check this out. And I heard them, and these guys are fucking good, man. We're going to book them here. Yeah, we're going to book them here. So they came up from D.C., and this isn't the first time they played New York. They've been playing New York a while. This is like the end of 1980 or whatever. But they came up, and they set up, and I did the sound. And all the hardcore kids came down, and they were doing those circle pits and everything. And I was running the sound, which was basically just turn HR up as loud as you can, you know, because we, you know, we had this big PA system, but, you know, turn HR up so you can hear him singing, and everybody else is pretty loud. And then there were these other bands that would play with him. Reagan Youth played all the time, and Kraut. And then the Undead would play, and all these other bands. The Young and the Useless, Urban Waste, Even Worse would play. Then there was like 76% Uncertain. Ultraviolence. There's so many bands that would play that you'll please forgive me if I don't remember all of them or don't get the memories correct. Please feel free to correct me on this shit, okay? But you know, so we'd have all these shows and Bad Brains would play, and there was a whole other bunch of groups that would come up, like I said. And then I realized that at the end of the night, on Saturday nights at Studio 10, it would be like 3 or 4 in the morning, and the bands would be done. So I played their New Year's Eve. I played their first one was with Don Death, my old buddy, the drummer from Instant Chemical Religion. So now it's like 5 years on. And then Mark Ettinger on upright bass. And I would just go out there with like a little Fender Champ practice amp that I had got for $25, right? And we'd go out and we would play like rockabilly, what I knew about rockabilly back then, you know, which was like Elvis, Sun Sessions tunes, and the Johnny Burnett Rock and Roll Trio, and you know, like I had these other reissues from Holland. I still have them, like the Charlie reissues. So I was playing rockabilly tunes and jump blues tunes, and I needed a name for the band, and I wanted a name like Ivan kind of frowned on you being in other bands. He thought you should just be in one band, you know, the Outsets. And so I wanted to kind of stay under the radar. So I thought, what's the stupidest fucking name? And I kept on, you know, there's all these bands around, like the Dots and the Mumps and like, oh my God. There was just so many, you know, like goofy ass fucking names back then for bands. So I figured Joey Miserable and the Worms. And I got it. There was this old 1920s comic strip called Bringing Up Father. And basically the whole point of the comic strip was that the dad was a drunk and he would come home like fucked up with like a top hat and tails on, and the mother would hit him in the head with a fucking like rolling pin or a stick. You miserable worm, bang, you miserable worm. So the mom was always beating the shit out of this guy for coming home drunk. And that was I love 1920s and 30s comics because it's so fucking violent. Like, and so anyway, it was Joey Miserable and the Worms. So we called the band Joey Miserable and the Worms. And we had fun. It was like upright bass. You know, we just went up there and we just, no rehearsal, no nothing, you know, just would play whatever to whoever was there at the end of the night. We just started doing it every night. We were like the cleanup band, you know, like all the other bands would play. So like the Bad Brains would play. There'd be this huge crowd, all the hardcore kids, all the punks. They'd leave, everybody leave, and we'd play to like, you know, the three yippies asleep. And people used to go upstairs in like the balconies of Studio 10 and just like fuck up there and stuff, like right in the middle of shows. It was a pretty wild place, you know. But I didn't care. I was just glad I had placed it, you know. I mean, I was in Avenue B Death House for like October, November, December. It just got, that winter was I couldn't take it when it was like, you know, 5 degrees Fahrenheit and, you know, no heat and shit. I couldn't take it no more. So, you know, I'm not a tough guy. I fucking went over to Studio 10. But that's how I got Joey Miserable and the Worms started. And I'm trying to think of some other bands. Void came up from Washington, D.C., and they played. Black Market Baby came up. I remember going to the A7 and Minor Threat was playing A7. I remember that. And, you know, I didn't really think about nothing like, this is legendary shit. These were just like, these kids were younger than me. So these are people that are like 10 years younger than me. I was like, let's go see these little kid bands. These, you know, these little kid bands. I was trying to learn how to play like Grady Martin, you know, the guy that played in all the Johnny Burnett stuff and all the Johnny Horton stuff. I was trying to play like Grady Martin or like Big Al Anderson or like Chuck Wayne, but I really always, you know, so that's how the Worms got started. And then there was this band of all these guys that used to hang at Central Park. They used to be hippies, and now they're like, you know, on the punk / new wave tip. Absolute Zero. It was like Ben Austin, and the drummer was Chris, and then Jono was the guitar player, and they were Absolute Zero. And I heard Jono's guitar playing, and I said, you know, the way I play and the way Jono plays, it would really orchestrate good together. It would really be a good sound. So I started talking to Jono. I knew him from the band shell a little bit. We started talking, so I said, why don't you come play with Joey Miserable and the Worms? So this is maybe 3 weeks into the Worms. So he played, and I was like, this is great, because he plays, I'm trying to play like Grady Martin, right, or somebody like that, and he plays like Steve Cropper. So it was like he had this very stark, kind of simple way of playing, and I would do all the fucking noodly spaced out shit, and we just kind of, it just worked. So then Jono joined. So then we had the first rhythm section was Mark Ettinger and Don Allen. Don Allen's a very peculiar cat. He's from Forest Hills. I was in Instant Chemical Religion. He was the drummer in that band, so I know him since like 75. And I remember the day that I met, they went to meet me over at my mom's house. I went over there to get my amp. So it was like Eddie Freeland, who's in the Mavericks now, and Don Death, and a bunch of other kids. And I was like, this is just what kind of asshole I was. I was like, wait, here, I forgot something. I ran back up to my mom's house. They're on the street with my amp. And I went in my mom's refrigerator and I took eggs and I started winging eggs at them at a practical joke. So I put the egg one like 10 foot on one side and they'd run that way and I'd bracket them and I'd get them on that side. And then I came downstairs and they were like, oh my God, Simon, while you were gone, holy shit. Some fucker started throwing shit at us from one of the buildings. I was like, so that's what fucking asshole I am. All right, so that's getting into the very early beginning days of the Worms, and I will speak to you again soon. All right. Also, please always remember, if you want to donate anything, here's the PayPal SimonChartier@hotmail.com. Any money that comes in will just be put into the recording envelope to make the next record. I'm going to make another record, rockabilly record with Simon and JJ. I'm going to write more tunes, to get together with Chris and write more music for the Ball Breaking Pricks. Make another Ball Breaking Prick. I'm lucky I'm playing in this band with Chris Ara. He's young enough to be one of my kids. He's like an age bracket of my kids. So I'm in this band with this cat that's young enough to be my son. So I'm really honored that these young cats want to have, we have an ageist society. A lot of people say, oh man, you old, you out of it. I know I always looked up to the older musicians when I was a kid. So I'm very grateful that these young cats want to fucking be in a band with me, and I'll speak to you soon. Take it sleazy.